Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing our second Christmas themed movie reaction for the holiday season. Today we will be rewatching, because I have seen this one, and breaking down, what one is it? A Christmas Horror Story, which came out in 2022, I believe. This movie was fantastic. Let me just start off with that. I have a big bias in this one. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I have noticed something rather interesting, which I will bring up toward the end. But having said that, let us dive right into A Christmas Horror Story. So our story begins with meeting Dangerous Dan, who is a struggling alcoholic radio DJ in a very small town called Bailey Downs, which the lore says is in Ontario, which I find fascinating. Because I'll circle back. Anyway, Dan is doing his Christmas Eve broadcast. And as he does so, listeners are drawn into 4 tales that are happening at the same time during our story. Okay. Dangerous Dan is sort of what pulls everybody, all the stories together. This is like a what do you call it? Like a trilogy sort of deal. It's like a quad. There's 4 stories that are happening. So our first story begins with 3 teenagers, Dylan, Ben, and Molly, who decide to sneak their way into their school. They want to explore a site. There was like there's like an older portion to the school that was originally like a convent, and the year prior there had been an unsolved murder that happened in that part of the school, where 2 students were ritualistically, there we go, I can speak, murdered in this basement area of the school that was once a convent. Their friend Capri is meant to join them, but she is forced to go on a spur-of-the-moment trip with her parents. But she's the one that gets them the keys to the school. Once inside, the trio inadvertently lock themselves in the basement. And soon after, Molly becomes possessed by a haunting spirit and attempts to seduce the others. While Dylan declines her advances, she kills him in a fit of rage. Ben, however, completely gives in, and after their encounter, the ghost relinquishes control, and so Molly is herself, and she is so totally confused as to what's going on. She's like, Ben, what you doing, buddy? Right? Molly reveals that the spirit is that of a long dead pregnant girl whose tragic story involved the brutal procedure inflicted by the convent nuns. So what I'm trying to say there, they forced her to no longer be pregnant. The ghost seeks to have her child born, and failure to comply results in death. So what they think happened to the other two kids the year prior was that, like, they just weren't down. They fought and resisted the spirit. The spirit got pissed and just deleted both of them, right? The motive behind last year, which was, the motive behind last year's grim murders. Upon seeing Ben with a weapon, the ghost perceives him as a threat because he's standing there with like it was like a bat or something that they found in the basement. And the spirit ends up killing him too, but ultimately unlocks the door, allowing Molly to escape. You know, she's completed her task. She has a vessel now. She happy. In the second story, Scott, a police officer involved in last year's investigation at the school, takes his family to cut down a Christmas tree in the woods of Big Earl. So he goes to this Big Earl's, basically the family goes to this Big Earl's land, like his private land, and they trespass and they cut down a tree off of Earl's property. Their joy is short-lived when Scott's young son, Will, strays and becomes lost in the woods. After a frantic search, they find him coiled in a tree, only to discover that Will is not who he seems. Big Earl warns them that Will has been replaced by a changeling, an imitation of their son, which after the changeling's sinister nature is revealed, leading to Scott's demise. And we are quite happy about that because although Scott's been through a lot, he's the police officer who discovered the two bodies in the that one part of the school the year prior. And he's been through some shit. However, he has a history of losing his temper, shall we say, and taking it out on his wife and son. So, when he inevitably meets his sticky end, we're not too brokenhearted about it, okay? It's fine. Kim, the mother, eventually is convinced by Earl that she has to bring her son back to the forest, right? You have to return the changeling. But he warns her not to show her intent because the changeling is able to feel things, right? He basically tells her that the changeling has, seen, felt, and tasted earthly pleasures and is not going to come back willingly. Eventually, she does get him back to the forest, so she has to knock the kid out. It's actually kind of funny. But she ends up killing Big Earl, who is revealed to be the changeling's cruel master. And the original Will is freed, returning him home with his mother. And so they let them go. Because when Kim returns the changeling, he's in a burlap sack sort of deal, and Earl's like kicking it and screaming at it, and, do what you're told, la la la, So I guess as a thank you for killing him and kind of freeing them, they let her and Will go. In the third story, we meet Caprice and her younger brother, Duncan, who are en route to their elderly aunt, Etta's, accompanied by their harsh parents. All these people do is argue. The entire family, all they do is argue. It's horrible. During their visit, Aunt Etta warns them of the terrifying legend of Krampus. Krampus. Causing Caprice excessive fear when Duncan misbehaves, to sort of poke at their aunt's caretaker, because he comes in with the boys like playing with this Krampus figurine, and yeah, he starts teasing him and whatever about the legend. After their parents insist they depart, a car crash forces the family to walk home, inadvertently drawing the attention of Krampus due to their past misdeeds. So what actually ends up happening is the boy breaks the Krampus figurine, and the daughter ends up stealing like this gold-plated lighter. And because the boy was told to leave the figurine alone and didn't, the aunt got pissed and said, y'all gotta go. Like, yeah. And who's it? Garrett? Garrett is the caretaker, and he's like, he's creepy. He's actually the guy, if anybody who watches Supernatural, the guy who plays Garrett is the guy who plays Death in Supernatural. He looks so creepy. He does great in this. Small part, but he does great. Seeking refuge in a church, they confess their wrongs in hopes of appeasing the creature. But one by one, they fall victim to the Krampus, until only Caprice stands. Ultimately, she manages to defeat Krampus, who transforms back into Garrett, revealing his fury stemmed from the family's mistreatment or misconduct around the house, right? Doing things they were told not to do, they're squabbling, all that kind of stuff. In a final twist, Caprice's anger leads her to morph into Krampus, claiming vengeance on Aunt Etna. Because when Caprice shows up at the house, she runs back to the house, there's like a great big cross on the door, and she's pounding and pounding and pounding and, begging for her aunt to let her in. Don't let me die out here, all this kind of shit, right? When she does finally let her in, they're standing by the fire and they're talking about what had happened, and it becomes Caprice's opinion. I'm not sure if that's actually what happened, but she believes that her aunt knew that Garrett was the Krampus, or had the ability to become the Krampus, right? With his hatred of Christmas, and he was pissed at the family and whatever. And she says to her, like, you kicked us out after you kicked him out, like, using us as bait sort of deal, right? And she just fucking loses her mind. And her aunt's like, be careful what you're doing. Like, fuck shit is about to occur. Like, calm the fuck down, right? And it's too late. Caprice morphs into the Krampus and ex-nays her aunt. It's very well shot. It's very well shot. And then the fourth story, and my favorite story, is a huge middle finger to Santa Claus and the North Pole sort of deal. So Santa Claus is at the North Pole at his castle, and he is like in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. It's fantastic. All his elves and his wife Martha turn into zombies one after the other as they succumb to rage. In the ensuing chaos, he battles against Krampus in the stables. However, it is later revealed that this Santa is actually Norman, or Stormin' Norman, at a mall. suffering from a psychotic break due to overwork, mistaking innocent mall customers for zombies during a chaotic Christmas event. The entire segment is a fragment of Norman's imagination. Just as the police arrive to intervene, they mistakenly shoot him while he is about to confront what he perceives to be Krampus, revealing the disturbing turn of events that Dangerous Dan has alluded to during his live broadcast. So, in the beginning, when we meet Dangerous Dan, Storm and Norman is in the room beside him. There's like the glass and whatever, and, you know, Dan's in his broadcast room and Norman is in the other. Norman is the weatherman, I believe, at the radio station. And he is supposed to go down and play Santa at the mall. They're doing like the food drive and all that kind of stuff on Christmas Eve. And throughout the story, Dan's trying to get a hold of Norman for reports and whatever. And as the story continues and we go back and forth between tales, we hear Dan talking about how, you know, he can't get a hold of Norman and, you know, but he's sure everything's fine. And it sort of devolves into, we're being told to stay away from the mall. There's a standoff at the mall. The police are all there, blah, 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 right? Say prayers for your loved ones. The best thing you can do is stay home, stay away from the mall, right? It is done so well. It is done so well. And it actually truly begins the movie with Santa at his North Pole castle. And, you know, the making of the toys and meeting the elves and all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of, the story kind of devolves as it goes on, woven in between the other 3 stories. It is so good. It is so good. And I remember when first time I watched this, I thought, oh, there's going to be this epic fight between Santa and Krampus, and it's going to be fucking fantastic. I was so pumped for it. I was so pumped. So when it switched to, you know, just this weatherman having an absolute meltdown, you know, I still thoroughly enjoyed it, but I was kind of like, damn, like I wanted to see that fight. But it was so good. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. The other thing that I wanted to discuss in this was the town of Bailey Downs, Ontario. That sounded familiar to me, and I realized it is the town used for It's a Wonderful Knife that I have done prior to this one. Also, I got curious and I did some digging. So let me find it, because I was thinking, like, is this a real place? Because it sounded so familiar to me. Like, is this a real place that, like, I mean, yeah, I was taken aback. So where was it here? Yes. Okay. So it takes place there. They use this, they say small Ontario community in Canada, right? This Bailey Downs. So it's in this movie. It's used in It's a Wonderful Knife, and it was used in Ginger Snaps. I knew it from somewhere, and it would have been Ginger Snaps, because it sounded familiar when I heard it in It's a Wonderful Knife, and then I heard it again in this, and I've seen this movie a million times. It never dawned on me. But watching those two back to back, I was like, I know, like, I've heard this before, and I was almost positive this was a real town. I had to Google it. I was like, no, I know it from yet another movie. So it's in 3 movies. And also, in my little Google search here, it is also used in Orphan Black. I think that's a TV show. I haven't seen it, but in my search here, that's what it says. So I found that absolutely fascinating. And I just wanted to mention that. So thank you. And I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. As always, I will put suggestions where you can see it in the description. But I highly recommend this one. I highly recommend it. I in no way told everything that happens. There's a lot that happens in this. So by all means, absolutely check it out for yourself. It is so good. You won't be sorry. It was great. Having said that, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next one.